This lovely patron asked me to make my own vampire horror movie. And despite me writing two vampire novels that have horror elements in them, I have never done something strictly horror with my vampire. And I'm combining multiple of my own fears, so hopefully this doesn't freak me out. We would open with a group of friends going hiking in the woods, all of them high school age, all of them trading banter, jumping over rocks, having fun. One of them mentioning that they have to leave before the sun goes down or else their parents will freak. These woods are well known within the community, where after night falls, sometimes people go in and never come out. Obviously, much like with a lot of 411 cases, you could chalk it up to just nature being nature and humans being humans, them tripping or a wild animal. But there is a darker rumor that the devil is in the woods and it eats the wayward souls that wander in. Our main character is the newest kid to the group and also new in town, and she is the one that is receiving all of this information from her friend. One of her friends, a loud, boisterous boy, screams, "The power of Christ compels you," while stamping on the ground. Everybody laughs at the thought of the devil being in the woods as they play, and as the sun begins to set, they all decide to make their way back. The loud boy, however, says that's stupid and there's so much else to look at and do and see, to which everyone outvotes him and they all begin to trail back. As everyone's walking, the main character looks back and sees the boisterous boy lagging behind. He hears something and begins to look around. Our main character stops and stares and watches as he twists his ear towards the ground, listening for something. And as he stalks closer and closer to it, he is then dragged into the earth. Our main character screams in horror, and the rest of the group finally look back, but he is already gone. The only thing left is a bloody pile of clothes over the hole, and none of them dare to touch them. It isn't until the next morning that the police come out where they find a hole only this big. They shine their flashlight down, but the darkness seems to go on forever. After this incident, the town locks down the woods and children no longer go there. Our main character moves out. After her parents heard about what happened, they put the priority of their daughter's mental health over everything else. They sell their home and move across the country. A decade later, our main character comes back to that old town, now decrepit. At the only inn in town, she finds one of her old high school friends. They reminisce about old days, and her friend fills her in on what happened. Because of the modern age, people learned about the legends of the devil in the woods, and they went looking for the devil in the woods. And they found it. Countless amounts of ghost hunters, podcasters, cryptid believers all disappeared in the dark. When too many people went missing in the woods, they decided to rampage the town instead, resulting in a lot of people fleeing. Business dried up, and well, they're the last remnants. Our main character asks if anyone's gone in to try and find the thing, to which her friend says of course they have, but anyone that finds it doesn't come back. The governor himself deciding that it's cheaper and less deadly to just leave the thing alone. The main character then begins to pore over all the past explorations, at least the bits that people managed to document before going missing. Old video cameras that were found in the woods that show some people being sucked into the ground. Some of these even being posted on the internet, but people just believing there's special effects and they can't wait to see this cool short film. Eventually she decides to go in the woods, during broad daylight of course, to look around, and sees that the few holes she saw in her youth have now become hundreds. And as she walks, she hears chittering, a strange little noise that makes her feel lightheaded and woozy. With the last of her strength, she runs and trips over one of the holes, smashing face first into the ground and knocking herself out. She awakens, the moon high, and hearing what she thinks are cicadas, until she realizes that it's not coming from around her, but from under her. In a panic, our main character scrambles up a tree as high as she can climb, something she hasn't done since she was a kid. And from atop the branches, she watches as an arm rises out of one of the tiny holes. Through sickening cracks and pops, She watches as this long-clawed, lengthy beast wiggles and squirms its way to the surface, how it pops itself back in place and begins to sniff the air. The main character is covered in mud, and she begins to panically rub it in all the places she can think that might give away her scent. She watches as this creature stalks around the forest. She waits and then witnesses as it drags a bear towards one of the holes. She watches in horror as this hulking beast is tugged and compressed and crushed into the earth, its wails and cries abruptly stopping and turning the forest silent. And then the beast that came from the ground, hopping into one of the other holes, breaking itself anew and climbing back down. She stays awake all night until the sun illuminates the woods, to which she then drops down and races out, going to the inn and telling her friend what she saw. She draws a picture of the lanky beast, and her friend's face pales, her stating that she thought that was a nightmare. She talks about how one night she woke up to a chittering and saw something strange out her window, but was too tired to process it and just went back to sleep. Realizing this thing could come into town, could potentially spread, makes them both resolved into trying to stop them. They initially think to just set a forest fire, but then both of them realize that's not a smart idea. Instead, they go and find old maps of the woods and realize that there is a cave system below them. They think that these creatures obviously have an aversion to sunlight, most likely UV rays, so they bring UV lights with them, as much cave equipment as they can, as well as first aid, and they go to the mouth of the caving system. It is a long, arduous trek into the woods, and by the time they make it, it is already the afternoon. Their plan is to release a flammable gas into the caving system, pumping it full before lighting it up. A little bit better than setting the entire forest on fire, and more likely to kill the creature and any more that could be down there. While the friend remains on lookout, the main character goes and tries to find the heart of the caving system, essentially the chamber that connects all of the chambers. What they've rigged up is essentially a canister of gas with one hole that then leads to multiple pronged heads. In essence, them putting a hose towards each tunnel to hopefully fill up the cavern fast. As she's placing down the hoses, she begins to hear a chittering that once again makes her feel lightheaded. She stumbles, accidentally breaking her headlight and cursing. She looks up and notices glittering above her, almost 100 of glittering dots that remind her of stars. Then she remembers she's on a mission. She breaks out her flare, cracks it open, and looks up to see hundreds of eyes staring down at her. The creatures in the cave screech, and she whips out her UV light, shining it on them. Their flesh bubbles and hisses, their rows of fangs being bared at her. She dual wields 2 UV lights, waving them around frantically as she tries to make her way out of the mouth of the cave. She screams to her friend to release the gas, However, she then realizes that they are all behind her, not in the chambers. She stops her running, now able to smell the gas. Over the phone, her and her friend rigged up, she tells her that she loves her. Our main character then takes out a lighter, and just before the creatures can reach her, she flicks it on. The friend had tried to run into the cave, but is blown back by the force of the explosion. The earth shakes and rumbles from the force, and it causes sinkholes. The friend manages to get out of there, and years later the town is slowly being rebuilt, the forest having now been paved down and making brand new homes. And as the friend walks down the street, a child comments on chittering they heard from the drain.
Okay, the end.